Now we can try to do more with this network, but I think we've done enough playing around with this sample, don't you? It's time to get our hands on some real data. Let's go back to our NodeXL section. We're going to go ahead and import our new data. So we click the import button off to the left side. Notably, don't get confused with the import button off to the right, as this is discussing attributes as opposed to the actual data that we'd like to grab. Now, there are a lot of options with what we can import using NodeXL. We can see some standard file formats such as UCINet, GraphML, and Pajek, which are familiar to you if you've done network analyses in the past. We also can import data from email networks, from Flickr, from Twitter, and from YouTube. For now, we'll go ahead and import from a Twitter users network. Now, there are a lot of options here that we could explore. Many of these we'll leave as the defaults. For example, we'll add a vertex to our graph for each person that is followed by the user. So for each individual who Bob follows, that person will be included in our network. We'll add an edge just for each followed and following relationship. We'll keep it simple and leave out replies to and mentions. Just to make things a little more interesting, we'll increase the levels to include up to 1.5. And 1.5 incorporates both connections from the individual in question to their direct alters in the network, as well as connections between those alters. Now, alters just describes people with whom the core individual is connected. We could have gone all the way up to the second level, but let's keep it simple for now at the 1.5 level. Now, a key point here is that we can limit the number of nodes that are collected in this process. We'll do so in this case and limit it to 100 people, which is the default. The reason we do so is simply that NodeXL doesn't exactly do the best job of handling massive data sets. And there are a couple of reasons for this. First of all, NodeXL is limited by the capacity of Microsoft Excel. Excel worksheets, as you may already know, have around 1 million rows per sheet. This sounds like a lot until you're trying to grab data from a massive community like that of Twitter, as we're doing now. Some individual Twitter users have upwards of 1 million followers, so trying to graph even their ego networks would be totally fruitless. Additionally, Twitter itself places limits on the amount of data that you can collect at one time. If you exceed their limit, they'll basically put a hold on your efforts and force NodeXL to pause. This means that any extensive effort to try to collect data about the connections between Twitter users will take an excruciating amount of time as Twitter continually forces NodeXL to pause. We don't want to deal with that, so we'll leave this as the default for now. The other option to note is this section at the bottom regarding your Twitter account. Now, I've already set up my Twitter account to work with NodeXL, basically meaning that NodeXL can use my Twitter account to access information more quickly and easily about Twitter users. I've set this up already myself, just for the sake of time. You can do so of your own accord. It's a simple one-step process. For now, let's go ahead and hit OK. Now, this process will take a fair bit of time. As you can see from the lines at the bottom, the program is telling us exactly who it's tracking at the moment. So for example, right now, it's getting people followed by, let's see, the Big Cafeteria came up a second ago, there was JWZ, and so on. It's moving quickly enough right now. Thankfully, many of these people don't seem to have all that many followers, so the process goes fairly quickly. If you get into a network where there are a tremendous number of followers for an individual, this can take quite a long time, as Twitter has to go through each individual that you're searching. So for example, if we were to try to search Barack Obama, well, Barack Obama is going to have a tremendous number of Twitter followers, and some of his followers may themselves be very prominent individuals, which increases the amount of time this process may take exponentially. And we have here a question about speeding up the import. We'll go ahead and do that just for the sake of simplicity, and it looks like we've got some new data here. Vertex, Gen Riber, to office, chi, stillings, and so forth. Certainly has nothing to do with NodeXL. This is our new Twitter data using their username. For now, let's go ahead and refresh the graph and see what happens. Now, it took a bit of time because we have many more nodes to process in this case, but as you can see, now we have our new data and the many interconnections between them. But we're still in this circle layout, which doesn't tell us a whole lot, to be honest here. Let's change this. We'll go to the circle option and select the original default. Now, it appears to be something in German or another European language. I'm not going to try to pronounce this, but this was the original default in NodeXL, so it should work for our purposes well enough at least. We'll select that option and again refresh the graph. And as you can see here, this substantially changes the layout of the nodes. We have a few key vertices sitting here in the middle, a few interspersed around, almost a second layer there, and you can see some connections between these altars as well, as opposed to just a single cluster around the core individual. And of course, we do have a bunch of outliers who probably are just connected with our original user Bob. Now we can certainly try a few more graph layouts here until we find one that's perhaps a little bit more pleasing, a bit easier to interpret. Harel Curran's not particularly helpful. We could try Sugiyama. We'll see what happens here. This one's taking a bit more time. This is a bit more complicated of an algorithm, and as we can see here, not very helpful in this case. Just for the sake of it, we'll return to our original default and move from here because it's time to do a bit of analysis. So we'll go back to our NodeXL section and select this Graph Metrics button. Graph Metrics allows us to do simple analyses about nodes, edges, as well as the network as a whole. We'll go ahead and select most of these. Degree, in-degree, and out-degree centrality. There's betweenness and closeness centrality, eigenvector centrality, as well as the PageRank score based on Google's own search algorithm. We'll do the clustering coefficient and edge reciprocation as well. This is the only actual edge analysis that we're going to do here, basically describing if there is a directed edge in one direction, is it reciprocated in the opposite direction as well. In other words, if I follow you, do you follow me back? And we'll calculate these metrics now. Takes a moment, has to go through a few processes, but it's already done. Again, this network has 100 people in it, and yet this process completes in just a few seconds. Now there are a lot of results that you can explore yourself. Right now we're directed to the overall metrics sheet since we had an overall metrics option. We can go back to the edges worksheet, look at what edges were reciprocated. For example, the one between Burnco and Bob was indeed reciprocated, as were those between Burnco and 2Office, and Chi and 2Office as well. For now though, let's go to vertices and take a look at what we see here. Jin Reiber, for example, has an in-degree of 11. What this means is that in this network of just these 100 users, 11 people decided to follow Jin Reiber. 20 people followed 2Office, and so on down the list. So many of these people we can see are following one another. It's a surprisingly well interconnected community.